So, hi Lakshmi, welcome to the second season of Design Rendezvous. Thank you for being here. I want to dive straight into the conversation, Lakshmi. We've been talking about, the travel that you were in. You were on a hike and you come back, and, we want to talk about some of the most amazing hikes that Indiahikes designs, right? Some of the most breathtaking hikes in the country and abroad. Tell us about green trails. So while we know a bit about Indiahikes, but I think what I want to focus on here in this conversation is green trails and why did it start, how did it start, and what is the reason behind really kind of moving towards that area?
Thank you, Payal, for having me here. So, why green trails? So, to just understand why green trails, I think we will have to go a little bit behind in history. So, I'll start from there. When Indiahikes started, the sole purpose of Indiahikes was to make trekking accessible for an average Indian. At that point of time, somewhere we are looking at 15 years ago, unless you are a very avid trekker, not many of the treks in Indian Himalayas was something that you could go and do, think about even considering doing. So there was a big lack of information. And second, most of these treks were only open to perhaps foreigners. So we wanted to change that, and I think Indiahikes wanted to focus on bringing out information that can help people go do treks on their own. Once we started that journey, in one of the treks where we went to explore Kashmir Great Lakes, it's the most popular trek right now if you really think about it. It wasn't called Kashmir Great Lakes at that point of time. So it was an amalgamation of two treks, and we kind of bridged that trek from one side to the other. So people used to go till Vishnusar, which is a place where they would fish for trout. And similarly, people would kind of come from the other side to Gambal and again camp over there and come back. The in-between region was what we kind of connected. So it is pretty much an unknown trek to Indians, except for foreigners who come and do this trek. However, when we went on that first exploratory trek, one of the glaring sights that you kind of saw was the amount of waste that was already there. This is in a place which is extremely remote, people have not even started trekking, and you see that kind of waste out there. And I think it hit the trekkers very hard, and they really felt like we haven't even got people to trek here. So we must do something about this. This cannot be how trekking can grow in India, and this is not how we want trekking also to grow in India. So I think a group of trekkers came together and we said, okay, we will just start collecting this waste as much as we can. We'll bring it all back. So I think that's almost the kind of spirit of where Green Trail started. We also realized that how are you going to manage human waste when so many people are going to trek? That was the next problem that also came in. And we also realized that the simple idea of digging a pit, pooping and then closing is not enough. We need to do something more. We need to perhaps find a way to compost human waste in such high altitude. So these two problems were the fundamental problems we started working on green trails with. Pretty soon we realized that if we really need to take it off, we need to bring in a formality to how green trails exists. So the next phase of it was, okay, let's now try and have separate groups which will come and only do cleanup. So the next part of it was when we came back to Rupkund, which is where Indiahikes started. By the time Rupkund had started getting more popular, and you also started seeing more waste on the trek. So we thought, okay, we need to kind of make sure that we have a regular way of cleaning up the waste. So do we only invite people who are very conscious, who really want to do something about environment, get them to come clean the waste and go? So that was the thought behind having a separate green trails trek in Rupkund. Went well, really well. I think they not just cleaned up the trail, they also kind of educated the villagers along the way. But then again, over time we realized that it cannot be something that you cannot solve the problem by just having one small group on a regular basis. So then we thought, okay, how do we scale this? Then we thought, there was just a little shift in perspective. I mean, isn't this something everyone should be a part of? We are taking everyday groups of trekkers to this trek. Why can't we ask people who are interested to be part of it to just do it as part of their trek?
Yeah.
So then that's how the thought of introducing green sweep, which is what we call it, as a daily part of a ritual on our treks. We said whoever is interested, come, we'll just clean up the trail. Wherever you feel you can bend down and pick up a waste and help clean the mountain. So we wanted the entire group of trekkers to become like a vacuum cleaner of sorts, kind of cleaning the trails as we go. So it kind of had that natural evolution, and we started solving other problems, and it kind of took off into a special initiative that we now call as Green Trails.
I love that you're saying that, this entire hike became like a vacuum cleaner of the mountains, right? So talk to me about, what are the various elements that are kept in mind to ensure it's a green trail. I know you touched up, upon a few, but I'm sure there is a program for it. It's not just, okay, if you're interested, let's just go around, cleaning the mountain. And, maybe touch upon what are the things that you all don't do, because that would be more interesting.
Yeah. So I'll talk about both. So what do we do on our treks? What do we also tell trekkers not to do on our treks? It's quite funny because trekkers do feel like, okay, I think coming with you have a lot of restrictions, but I think we come from the right place. So what do we do or stress on is we try and clean up the waste as much as we can when we go on a trek. So one of the things that we kind of designed very specifically for our trek is what we call as an eco bag. Because we also realized that, okay, if you're going to pick up waste, we need to make it very convenient. We need to make it something that's ease. Trekkers are spread out on the trail. They cannot kind of pick up a waste and hold it in their hand. They're not going to put it in their backpack. Where are they going to keep it? So we thought, okay, why don't we provide a pouch that goes around the waste? Trekkers can just pick up the waste, put it out there. It can hold up to 1 kg of waste very easily. As soon as we reach the campsite, we will make sure that there is a setup where they can dump the waste that they have collected, so they have an empty bag for the next day. So we kind of created that entire flow and design that makes it very easy for them to collect waste. So that's one thing that we do. So green sweep, and we also segregate the waste. So those are two things that we do very consciously. The second thing is we also focus on composting our waste. So one of the biggest source of waste on our treks is organic waste. Either it is our kitchen waste or it is the human waste that we generate while we are on the trek. So one of the things that we also adopted as a practice is composting toilets. So there is existence of composting toilets across the world, but they are very, very not necessarily very mobile. So we kind of tried and built a mobile version of it, tried and see how we can adapt it into our own existing pits in a way that it has the benefit of both. So we built the composting toilets. We also compost our food waste on the trek. That way we minimized or kind of made sure that all our organic waste is taken care of properly on the trek. So green sweep, segregation, composting food waste, composting human waste. So we kind of had 4 very categorical rituals that happens on the trek. And the next part we wanted to target is our water footprint. So you do use water for cooking, you use water for washing. We wanted to even try and see, can we minimize the amount of water we use per person on the trek. So we designed a specific washing system that helped us reduce the amount of water we are using by almost 1/3 or 1/4, which I felt is something that also helped us conserve or minimize our water footprint. Then we also carry solar panels on our trek to make sure that the lights that we use on the trek comes from renewable energy source. So we charge our batteries while we are on the trek, and we use it in the kitchen and in a dining space to make sure that we light up our entire space using solar energy. So these are some of the things that we are doing. We started doing. Now what we are also trying to do is look into our own supply chain. So we do make very hot, fresh food on the trek. So how are we minimizing the kind of packaging waste that comes from there is something that we are also looking into. So this is, as an organization, how we run our treks, we focus on these aspects. When it comes to trekkers, trekkers also create a lot of impact on the trek. So we also educate our trekkers in ensuring that their purpose and impact on the trek is very minimal. So one of the things we insist on is we encourage our trekkers to not offload their backpack, but to carry their backpack on their own. Many organizations see it as a separate revenue source, but we feel that it kind of goes against the spirit of trekking. So if you are up for it, if you're fit, if you feel you can carry a backpack, we encourage you to do that. It's not by default your backpack is offloaded. So that was one of the changes we brought in. We also very consciously tell our trekkers not to go off the trail. So when you're on the trek, you also have a trampling effect. So we want to minimize our trampling effect. So we very consciously guide our trekkers to take the trail and not go off the path. So that's another thing we insist on. We tell them not to play loud music. We tell them to bring their own cutlery on the trek. Because many times trekkers come and ask us, why don't you provide food in like a paper plate or an aracanut plate? But then we share that anything that you use only once and you throw is a problem in the trek. So we insist on them getting their own cutlery, and people gladly do that, and I think it's so wonderful to see them practice it very consciously. We strongly discourage them from buying any packaged food on the trek. We tell them, if at all you want to experience the local culture, so buy local food, because you are not creating a demand for something that's very unsustainable in this environment. So we again educate our trekkers to do that. So a lot of don'ts, but I think it kind of, most of our trekkers understand where we come from, why we say that, and I think they are most obliging. We also tell how to manage their, with female trekkers, we also share with them how to manage their menstrual waste, if at all they have their periods on the trek. So in all, we kind of try and see Green Trails as a very holistic way of how we want trekking to happen. It kind of covers everything. How we trek, how we eat, what we choose to eat, what we do. So it kind of covers everything, and we kind of try to integrate it with how we run our trek as in general. Towards the end of the trek, we also kind of share the thought that if this a trek is a beautiful place to connect with nature, and we really design our treks to build that connection. And we say, if you really felt that connection, the biggest way you can leave the mountains better, which is our vision, is actually by changing or taking back sustainability back into your daily life. And we kind of encourage them to kind of continue or start a journey of sustainability back in their life, and kind of conclude the trek part towards that. So that's the arc we kind of more or less take during the trek.
And that's so beautiful, Lakshmi. You mentioned that the best thing you can give back to the nature is your own vision of how you want to make a change back in your, so to say, reality, right? I want to talk about, and I'm curious about the future of conscious travelers, eco travel, name it what you want, and this growing demand of it. You mentioned that first it was optional. If you're interested, let me ask them, but now it's become like a ritual. And I know how Indiahikes has also grown exponentially, right? So what does the future look like? How are you seeing Green Trails or the travelers responding to it?
I do feel travel is going to be a big part of our life. I think Indians are having a better economy. I think they are also understanding that travel is a big part of their life, and their how they want to lead their life. And just like how travel is, even trekking is going to be a big part of everyone's life. I mean, the fact that we are seeing so many people in the mountains and it's growing shows that this is not a trend that is going to go back. It is going to only grow. And it is not that, okay, now Indiahikes can do anything about it. No, we cannot. I mean, if not Indiahikes, they are going to go with anybody and everybody. So rather than trying to build restrictions, I think what is required are regulations in place strong guidelines in place and strong enforcement of the guidelines on the trek. So that trekkers do come on treks and they do it the right way. Now, how are we going to build an ecosystem that is designed to make a trekker do the trek the right way is the challenge I think we all need to focus on. Yes, Indiahikes has a part to play in it, but I think every organization who is also taking a trek also has a part to play in it. What is also important to understand is that these are the only places people can very strongly connect back to nature. I mean, the spaces where people can connect to nature is actually shrinking with time. So we need these spaces because otherwise we are going to have generations coming who will never understand what is it that they want to protect, what is it that they want, why do they need to be sustainable, has to kind of be justified. And I think the biggest justification comes when they go spend a week in the mountains, when they have nothing else but to depend on nature. So I think more than it being a trend, I feel it's also a necessary experience that brings about a holistic development in a person. That's how I see it. And for us to have that, we really need to build in an environment or an ecosystem that can foster sustainability. So that's one of the reasons why we are very vocal about our green trails practices. It's not just that we want to follow it; we want everyone also to follow it, and we also are working very closely with the government to see that they put in the guidelines necessary for this to sustain and to grow and not just be limited with Indiahikes. And that's the direction we also want to move towards. Yes.
You spoke about the future generations, right? And if we don't do anything right now at any level, they're actually not going to know. Forget even imagining, right? And I feel how beautifully you mentioned that when you come back to your reality is when actually the change happens, right? Your behavior is going to be manifested in your reality and not up in the mountains because you're wowed over there and you're busy being accelerated. But when you come back is when it hits you. And I want to move this conversation to the future of designing experiences. You mentioned about working with the government, having policies in place. As much as you all are designing your hikes as much as possible, but it's only going to be holistic if you have a more well-rounded support, right, from the government. And talking about students, talking about young entrepreneurs, young creatives who are in this realm of designing experiences of any sort. It could be travel, it could be something else, but travel at large, right, if not hikes. What, according to you, should design schools or studios or setups of any sort incorporate in their, in their aspect of curriculums or in their aspect of just learning in general? As to, how can I be more conscious from the get-go, not towards the end of it all and, make it all pretty?
I feel even right now, sustainability is more or less an afterthought. And I feel that needs to change in the sense, anytime we perhaps are designing a space or you're designing your new business or you're building a business model, I think a central part of it should be sustainability. How are you, and very consciously focusing on few things like how are you reducing your carbon footprint, how are you reducing your water footprint, how are you reducing your energy footprint, and these are very different. And how are you reducing your plastic footprint, and what are the ways you can make sure that these are minimized, and how can you still move ahead towards your objective keeping these things in mind. I think that has to be a central focus while designing, and as you very rightly said, it cannot once you kickstart, right, it becomes very difficult to kind of add anything to it unless it really fits in within that scope of what you already put in a lot of thought into. And I feel that's where most of us also struggle, and I think that's one of the biggest barriers of moving towards sustainability is that you've already invested so much, you have put in everything, and now if you want to change it, you have to change everything fundamentally. Then nobody wants to do that because it's so I think right from the get-go, thinking about it and making everything central to it, I think is very, very important.
Fantastic.
circular. I think that's the term that keeps coming up is what I'm doing circular and what can I do to make sure that it's circular. I think if we are able to answer that in our design plan, I think there's nothing like it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. It's so beautiful, like you said, that everything is circular. And I think it takes a lot of intention, courage, and motivation, because it's not like everybody around you is doing that, right? Like you really have to put yourself out there, make these choices, and help inspire other people. And thank you for inspiring us.
Thank you.
But thank you so much, Lakshmi, for being here today, and hopefully we catch up again very soon in my next hike, which I'm very soon going to book now. So yes, I'll see you soon.
Thank you, Payal.
Thank you so much.